Thank you for joining me today, Kyla. Today we have Kyla Jeffrey from HeroX joining us to speak about everything to do with public sector organizations and crowdsourcing. So this is well, firstly, welcome, Kyla. Thank you for being here. And this is going to be a sequel, if you will, for a previous interview that we ran a few weeks ago with Christian, when we spoke all about innovation within organizations and how important it is to match their internal rate of innovation with their external rate of innovation. And a great way to do that is through crowdsourcing. Let's dive right into it. Kyla, please will you tell me, a story about an organization which HeroX has, worked with and ran a really successful crowdsourcing project. Can you just walk me through what that experience was like and what the challenge was?
Absolutely. So the story I'm going to share is from NASA, and it's their Next Generation Animal Tracking Challenge. I'm sure you're familiar with animals being tagged and wanting to track their position, and that's so critical for conservation. It's critical for the preservation of our food systems, making sure we know how our fish stocks are doing, our marine mammals, and having accurate information is the key to being able to preserve our environment, both for our society and for the natural world. So whenever a marine animal is being tracked, they're actually relaying a signal up to a satellite in some year that I'll get you because I don't know the right year right now. And so all of the animal tracking around the world is actually using technology that is incredibly outdated and not meant to last until today. Mm-hmm. And this just doesn't work, right? So what NASA came and did is they said, we want to look and see how we can create an animal tracking system to be able to more accurately identify where animals' positions are well into the future. Mm-hmm. And they've already been looking at other things. They did a blimp test at the same time as this challenge was going on, and they've been exploring lots of different avenues. So crowdsourcing was really just one approach and one tool that they used to go towards this innovation goal. Mm-hmm. So they put up a challenge, and the challenge had a $30,000 prize attached to it for anyone anywhere in the world to propose a system that could enhance and replace the current data collection system. Mm-hmm. They ended up with over 443 innovators from all around the world participating in the challenge, people from very diverse and varied backgrounds, everyone from tech entrepreneurs to scientists to people in telecommunications participated and collaborated to form teams. So the ultimate winner of this challenge was a man by the name of Hugo Shelley and a team of international competitors that he assembled to work on this project with him. Mm-hmm. Hugo's actually won a few challenges for NASA. He also won their CubeSat challenge and even their Space Poop challenge. So he's made a big contribution to the US government's crowdsourcing efforts. And his kind of 9-to-5 job is owning and operating a prototyping and design studio in London. Mm-hmm. And so he has a background in physics and philosophy and has worked on such a variety of projects that he's able to come and approach challenges from a very diverse perspective. Mm-hmm. And bring in interesting expertise to solve the challenge.
Right. That's amazing. So this challenge was won by someone not, I'm assuming this happened in the United States. This was won by someone who wasn't in the United States, and they brought together a team of people who even wasn't in the same country as him. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. I believe Hugo is in London, but let me just double check.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. And I suppose that is like one of the most, biggest advantages of crowdsourcing, is that you're pulling this global knowledge from everywhere. And you never know where your actual answer is going to come from. But that's super exciting, and also a really great and I think very important societal and environmental challenge that was looked at. And I know HeroX has many of those important problems on their platform waiting to be solved by these global innovators. Do you have another example of a successful crowdsourcing challenge that HeroX has worked with the PSO on?
I sure do. So the next example is from the New York State Department of Health. and the Commissioner on Health and Aging. So we really have this critical issue in aging where our population of elderly is increasing and the population of caregivers is not. And so we're starting to see that the ratio of caregivers to older adults is really putting a burden on society. And as anyone who's affected or who has an older adult in their life, you know how important it is for them to be able to age in place and age at home. No one wants to leave their home and go into an assisted living type facility unless they really need to. And so the Aging Innovation Challenge came out and said, how can we help older adults with the activities of daily living that are necessary to be able to live at home? So those are activities like feeding yourself, like toileting or transferring. So moving from, you know, a bed to standing or something like that. It's also dressing and grooming, mobility and bathing. So what kind of prototype can we design to support our older adults with those activities? So they launched a challenge. There was $50,000 in prize money, and it was targeted at university students. So they actually had really phenomenal results with over 48 entries from teams who had some sort of prototype idea that they were looking at. From those 48 entries, they then down selected to our semi-finalists that were advancing to prototyping, and that was 23 semi-finalists that advanced to prototyping and went on and actually spent an entire summer building a prototype to have a fully functional assisted device that an adult could use for those activities of daily living. Wow. There was a really cool pitch competition that happened in the fall. So the top teams, there were 5 grand prize finalist teams that actually came to New York City and pitched to a panel of live judges. They were able to show the panel exactly how their prototype worked, what impact it would make, and what difference it would make. And it was such a hard decision for the government to figure out which team was best that they actually ended up awarding 2. Wow. And there are some really great quotes from the student teams about the impact that this made on them that I will also share in the text that we can include in this. Fantastic. So if I'm understanding you correctly, this wasn't just, submitting solutions for ideas. These people actually, or these students rather, actually went out and actually created and demonstrated a prototype to the New York State Health Department. Is that correct? Absolutely. Yes. Wow. Fully working prototypes. So there was one prototype that was an assisted device to help people with motor control issues be able to eat and feed themselves. There was another one that was like an inflatable seat cushion, so you could actually inflate it to help you stand up and get off of a chair, which was quite cool. And there was even one that was a toenail trimmer, so you could trim your toenails without needing to bend down and trim them, because that can be quite difficult for some folks. You see, the thing I love most about that example is the fact of how real it is, right? It's so amazing to see all these challenges where like, oh, they're big and audacious, and solar tracking for animal migration stuff, but it's a little bit further away from you in everyday living, right? Whereas your grandparents, or in some cases even your parents or yourself, you know what it is, what it takes to go through everyday life. And being on the younger side of generations, you take for granted such things, but like to think that these are actual students who came and they thought of solutions for someone who could even very well be in your life. That's pretty incredible. So I think we can agree that crowdsourcing can have a direct impact in your own life, right? In any of our lives. And these public sector organizations are obviously recognizing that there are issues that fall kind of underneath their realm of responsibility that they need to try and address. And crowdsourcing is a fantastic way to try and get those ideas and try and innovate and achieve such things. So as someone who's been involved on that side of working with these organizations, how do they get started? What would be your advice for these organizations who read these stories and are inspired to get started? Great question. So crowdsourcing is a tool. It's a tool that you can use to tackle what you're trying to innovate on. And so we always recommend that organizations, whether they're public sector or otherwise, start with what their top priorities as a business are. Where are you looking to create the most business value? And then where are you a little bit unsure about the path of how to get there? Yeah. Or that you've already invested a lot of resources and internal experts on, and you haven't found that breakthrough that you're looking for. And start in those places, because crowdsourcing is really just something that augments the work that your team is already doing. It doesn't replace the experts that you have, but rather it 10x's the impact that they can have when you empower them with this additional tool of crowdsourcing to leverage the brain power of literally the global crowd.
It doesn't need to be big and hairy and scary. It can be something very simple and just a very introspective kind of reflection. And I'm assuming at that moment where they do figure out those priorities, it's companies like HeroX who are there to help support and guide them through the actual planning and design and then implementation. So that's all great advice. Thank you, Kyla. Is there anything else you want to include before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's great.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well then, Kyla, thank you so much for joining me today. Some great stories. I'm sure that there are many, many, many more in the past and many more to come. And I'm excited to see that. So I'm sure, as always, if anyone does want to go read up a bit about what is happening on HeroX or what's about to happen, go to www.herox.com and read more and learn more about these exciting stories. And then one more time, thank you so much, Kyla, and we'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Desi.
Cheers.